Hey everyone, welcome to week 4. This is a key week. This is where you start putting everything together and you're going to write your first news story, or at least you're going to begin reporting and writing on your first news story. So I feel like this is a week now. In the beginning was just building the foundation, and now you're going to start putting it to actual practice. So let's talk about what we're going to do this week. We're going to be reading chapters 7 and 8. Both important chapters, though 7 I think is a really important chapter for you to really study and make sure you understand. We're going to be going over leads and nut graphs. And I know you have a basic understanding because we've talked about it in previous chapters, but now we dive into the details. And if you can get your lead and your nut graph and you can do it well, your rest of your story will kind of just flow. It's built on that lead and nut graph. So again, the lead is that first sentence. It's the hook. It's what's bringing the reader in. It gives the who, what, when, where, why, how, though it does not have to always give all of those, but it will usually cover most of them. So that's your lead, and then the nut graph breaks into the details. So the nut graph is usually the second paragraph. Sometimes it can be the second and third, but within those first 3 paragraphs, you should have somebody could then walk away and understand basically what the story is about or what's happened. They don't even need the rest of the information. They can have a general understanding of what occurred by just reading those first 3 paragraphs. So that's chapter 7 goes into lead and nut graphs. Chapter 8 goes into story organization, so how you organize your facts. So the thing is, reporters go to a story and they're getting the information. You're all working with the same set of facts. The question is now, how do you organize it? Your job as the reporter now is, all right, I have all this information. How do I synthesize it? How do I break it down so the key information is given in the right order and it makes sense to the reader? That's the big challenge of the organization. So that's where chapter 8 is going to help you out. How do you organize all that key information? And you kind of already have done it with previous exercises. That first exercise we did where you had to take that information, that story about the left and right-handed deaths, people dying earlier as left-handed. You had to take that information and organize it. That's really what we're going to be diving even deeper into with chapter 8. Just as a side here, you can read it if you'd like, but you do not have to read pages 125 through 134 in chapter 7. So I don't think that's crucial for this class. If you want to read it, you can, but it's not going to be part of the quiz, and I don't think it's necessarily key information that you're going to need. All right, you're going to read the example of the hard news story, which is this one, and I'm going to go over it a little bit right now too in the video, but I'd like you to read that, and I'd like you to read it after you've read chapters 7 and 8, because I think then it'll be easier for you to connect the dots. Once you've read chapter 7 and 8, you'll be able to read that hard news story and connect things that you learned from the chapter and say, oh, I see now. I see what they did to make this the lead. I see the nut graph. Here's why they put quotes here. Here's where their background information is. So this will make a lot more sense, I think, to you once you've seen once you've read these 2 chapters. It will really help you apply the lessons that you've been learning. Take the quiz. As you guys know, you've been doing a good job with that. And then begin your hard news story. And I'm going to go over your hard news story in this video as well. What I like to do, though, is even though I'd like you to read this article on your own after the 2 chapters, I'm going to open it and just go over some of the basic elements that you're going to be reading about this week, and just so you can also hear me say it and give some of my extra tips. So this is a story, I think this was last year, 2018. All right, well, actually, it was this just a few months ago. So this shows you how time gets distorted in your mind with all this information overload. But it's about the children that were rescued in Thailand under the cave. So what I want to do is I'm going to read the lead, the nut graph, and then just kind of point out some of the key information and how they organized it. So let's focus on their lead. And actually, before we even get to the lead, which is this first sentence here, this first paragraph, a headline and a lead are different things. So the headline is only a few words, right? Notice it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 words. And a lead here you have over 20. So the headline is short. It's just to kind of give you, that really is a hook. It's really just to get you to read the story, right? It gives you the very basics of, broadly, what is a story about? So 4 rescued from Thai cave and risky operation, 9 remain inside. That's just the headline. So what I like you, the only reason I'm pointing this out is I don't want you to confuse headline with leads. They're different things. Headline just kind of gives you a general overview of what the story is about. Let's take a look at the lead now. Expert divers Sunday released 4 of 12 boys from a flooded cave in northern Thailand, where they were trapped with their soccer coach for more than 2 weeks, as dangerous and complicated operations unfolded amid heavy rain and the threat of rising water underground. So, first, before we even get into this, as a side note here, this is a long sentence. Now, the AP, our professionals, they were able to get away with it because they knew how to do it right. For most of you, I would even say to try to get your leads shorter. I mean, it's one concise sentence, especially when you're first learning and you're starting out. But I did want to make a point that this is only one sentence. Your leads are only one sentence. So I'm going to say that again because in your first writing assignments, I'm going to be looking for this. Your lead is only one sentence. Sometimes you might see a 2-sentence lead, but again, that's breaking the rules because you know the rules and the journalist knows what they're doing and knows why they're getting away with it. But 99% of the time, it's 1-sentence leads. This is a very long one. Again, they had to really command the English language and know how to get away with it, but they were able to get into 1 sentence. So again, that's my Chiara side note for you, but all your leads are 1 sentence. If you were doing this story, I would let you put a little less information in here and just get it more concise. They were able to get away with it. But let me explain why I do like this lead. So, the who, well, they're talking about expert divers Sunday rescuing 12 boys. So, you already know who's involved in this story. You know the what, that these expert divers are trying to rescue these children that are stuck in a northern Thailand cave. So, we know the where. We know the why. Let's see. Oh, why is this all happening? Because it's a dangerous and complicated operation, and the threat of rising waters underground is making it immediate. We know. I'm trying to remember all the ones we did. Who, what, when, where, why, and then I guess the how they kind of go over a little bit. But the point is, within here, you saw we checked a lot of those boxes. We have a who, we have a when, we have a where. The when was Sunday, right? We have a when, we have a where, Thailand. We have a why because the rising waters. This lead covers pretty much everything. Now again, you don't need to always put a who, what, when, where, why, and how in your lead. You sometimes only have a few. This one just happened to do a good job of getting all of them in there. Now let's talk about the actual nut graph here, which I will say the nut graph is these 2 sentences, 2 paragraphs. You could have made them one. Some nut graphs are sometimes just 1 paragraph. And you probably could have combined these 2, but here we go. So let's go into the nut graph. 8 boys and the coach remained inside the, I'm going to say this wrong, Tham Luang Nang Nan cave as authorities paused the international effort to replenish air tanks along the treacherous exit route. Extracting everyone could take up to 4 days, but the initial success raised hopes that it could be done. So again, going back to our nut graphs, this encapsulates the story. It also is the focus. So now we know what this story is about, that they have to rescue them, and that it's possible that it can be done, but the air is a issue. So within the lead and the nut graph, we already know the basics of the story. What you could also have done in your nut graph is add more details. So here's something that's going to throw some of you off. It's in the chapter. Names usually are not put in the lead unless it's a person of prominence. So if it's a celebrity, a politician, maybe you put the name in the lead. But other than that, you're not putting names in the lead. You notice they're not talking about names of the people rescuing, of the boys. Specific details like the actual cave's name, right, does not show up here in the lead. That goes in the nut graph. Let's see. I'm trying to think of what else. If they didn't do it here, but if they talk about the actual soccer team, if they said the soccer team's name, that would go here in the nut graph somewhere in the details. It wouldn't go in the lead. So your lead is general. You use modifiers to talk to somebody. So instead of saying Joe Schmo is going to be rescuing these boys, you say a rescue diver is going to rescue these boys. Then maybe in the nut graph, if you want to disclaim the person's name, you say Joe Schmo, a rescue diver of 12 years, is going to make the treacherous trip to go. See what I did there? So I didn't list the name in the first one. I call him a rescue diver. I give a general definition. Say you're talking about a professor. A professor of Middlesex Community College is going to be retiring after 22 years. Next paragraph. Professor Adam Chiara is retiring next year after 22 years of service. That's not true, but you see what I did there, right? That first one was a professor at Middlesex. We just know the title, who the person is. Then in the nut graph, you can start giving the details, the names. You don't want to give too many details in the lead because you're going to overload the person with information. It's just going to be too much for them. So you give it very general in the lead, and then you start giving information in the nut graph, and then beyond too, but you get a lot of those details in the nut graph. All right, so we see the first two here. Then I like what they do right away. Then they go into a quote. That's a good way to do a story organization. Your lead quote, your first quote should be appearing between 3 and 4 paragraphs usually in a story. So after the third or fourth paragraph, get that first quote in there, the lead quote, and they have their lead quote here. The operation went much better as expected. Said, then they talk about the person names, who's overseeing the mission. Now we start to break into background information. So you start to give information that's helpful, but not necessarily what you need in these first few paragraphs to understand what the story is about. So they give some background information, they give some more quotes, and then just like with your first exercise, you'll see as we get lower and lower, this information becomes less and less important to the story. Still good to know, but it's not needed. And I'll just give an example right here. Let's take the last two. In his own letter, the coach who was stuck in the cave, apologized to the boy's parents for their ordeal, and then they do a quote that he said about promising to get him out. Yeah, that's touching. It's nice. It's a nice little touch to understand, to just get a flavor of what is happening in the cave and what they're thinking. But it's not crucial to the rescue diving, which is the focus of the story, right? The focus of the story is that these expert divers are going to go down and try to rescue him before they run out of air. So understanding that the coach wrote a letter and said something nice to the parents, it's a nice detail, but it's not needed for the story. That's why it's near the bottom. Something like this should not be, the second, third paragraph. And that's what we're talking about with story organization. Understanding you have all this information and how does it actually fit. And where a lot of you, I like this example because where a lot of you might get tripped up is you say, well, that's nice. That tugs at the heartstrings. I want to get that up early in the story. It is a nice detail. But again, is it crucial to what your focus is? No. Then you got to put it near the bottom. So understanding story organization is really important because you have to think objectively and think it's not just about things that you think are cool that you need to put up. It's what actually makes sense for the story. What does the reader need to know? And there can be a little wiggle room, right? If you put this near the middle of the story and something from the middle near the bottom, that's a preference for a journalist, and it's certainly not wrong if you're doing it like that, right? If this detail ends up more in the middle and something else probably ends up down here, that's kind of the preference of the reporter. What is wrong is if it goes near the top. So there's a formula to follow, but you still have a little flexibility on where you think the most important information needs to go. Okay. So read again chapters 7 and 8, and then read this article and look for things that you learn in the chapters. Look how it's applied within this article. And I'll also step back and just say that this is a guideline. It's a formula we follow. It's not always a hard, fast rule. Sometimes you're going to see some of these, what you learn, get broken a little bit. Sometimes you're not going to see everything done the exact same way. So I don't want you to think that there's not always just one right answer. There are definitely best practices, though. There are definitely rules you kind of want to follow. And that's what this class is about. I'm going to just make sure you're trying to apply those rules. As you get better at this, you can start to then know when to break some of those rules because there might be a reason. But in the beginning right now, we're going to follow these guidelines, these rules that we're learning, these best practices to craft your stories. All right, let's talk about homework. So you have chapters in 7 and 8, the quizzes. You guys have been doing a very good job with that, so keep that up. Let's talk about your hard news story. So this is your first written assignment. Remember, it's worth 100 points out of the course, so 10% of your grade. It's going to be due Sunday, October 7th. So you've got a little bit to go with this. You've got about 3 weeks, but this will sneak up on you. This first week, you're going to want to find your story. You're going to maybe want to go report on it. The next week, you're going to want to start to write it. I'm just giving you an idea how you can organize this. The next week, you're going to want to start to write it and edit it. And then that last week is really, I think, a good week just to edit. Go back, keep looking. You're going to see you're going to have to edit for something called AP style, which we'll talk about. Look back, maybe rearrange some things that you've written. So if you do it for 3 weeks, you can really use your time management, spread it out. If you try to all do it in a week, I've just noticed, when students try to cram it in a week, in a few days, those stories are always not as high as a grade. It just ends up just not being, you're just too rushed. So 3 weeks, I think, is a good time if you manage it well. Let's talk about what you're going to be doing. You're going to write a hard news story and must cover a live event that you attend in person. So we're going to talk about this. I'll give some examples. But basically, you're going out and you're reporting on something that's happening in the moment. Well, you know what? This is actually a good time to go over some of those examples. So if I scroll down here, examples of live events could be a concert, right? So if you're actually going to some kind of concert, and it doesn't have to be a professional concert. I mean, it could be one at a local park. It could be your kid's concert. You know, I mean, I'll let you do anything. I just want you going to an event and being live with it, right? It could be a sports game. If you like sports, this is a good time to do something like this. Again, it can be a professional one, could be a minor league one, could be your nephew's. However, it cannot be one you're watching on TV. I'm not going to let you do it if you're watching football on Sunday, cover that game. It has to be something that you're physically at. A town meeting. So the town that you live in, they hold meetings usually once a week or several meetings. Board of Education. What else would they hold? You know, town council meetings, environmental meetings, whatever it is. You can go check your town's website for the schedule of their town hall meetings. You could go to do that. That's a live in-person event. A town event, if there's something going on. Sometimes we're entering fall right now. There's festivals going on. There's other, I don't know, openings of I don't know. There's farm stuff, right? There's like a farm, and they'll do something. Things that are happening maybe in your community. That's an actual event that you can show up to in that moment. A public speech. If you live around Middlesex Community College, speeches often happen on campus. Check out a speech. Actually, Middlesex is just a great place. See what's going on campus. And some of the stories that we do here might end up in the Flying Horse, which I'll talk to you guys about, which is Middlesex's campus newspaper. Some of the stories that you guys write, if it fits along with the newspaper, will end up there. So if you do an event on Middlesex, it's even better, and you might get yourself a chance to get yourself in the newspaper. So think of what's going on campus. Libraries hold a bunch of events. Charities hold events. Look at some nonprofits. Are they having some kind of charity event? School board meeting, etc. So hopefully you're seeing where I'm going here. It has to be something that you show up and it's live. Now I'm doing a loose definition of a hard news story. I mean, this is a real hard news story, right? That these children are stuck in a cave. It's happening in the moment. There's one chance to go and cover this. It's not something that you're going to go cover 3 weeks later, right? It's not a feature story, which we'll talk about. This is a good hard news story. Other hard news stories are usually like fires, police things, a car chase, an arrest. Let's see what else we got that's good breaking news. I don't know, somebody's coming to town and a big prominent person's coming to town to give a speech, an election, right? These are hard news stories. I'm a little loose in my definition here, but the way I'm defining it for you guys, because I know you're not going to be able to go out there and cover a fire or a police chase, right, is that something that's live that you're attending to that you really have only one chance to cover. If you miss that town meeting, you're not going to be able to go cover it. If you miss that event at the library, you're not able to report on it after. It's something that you have to be there in person. You only have one chance to cover it. That's what I'm looking for, a live event. It needs to be a Word document or similar program. Do not type the story in Blackboard, so type it into Word and put it in. All right, so here's what you're going to be having to do for your assignment. You will not be your story must not use reporting from other stories or direct language from other stories. So this is what you cannot do. Let's say you cover a town event, and there's another reporter there that covers a town event, and you see it in the newspaper the day after. You cannot take any of the reporting that they did, any of the language that they did, any quotes that they took from somebody else. You can't use that, right? Everything has to be your original reporting. So basically, there should be no, and this gets really important to the next one, which I'll talk about, but you can't take quotes off the web. You can't take quotes off somebody else. Everything has to be you. You have to be the one to write it down. It's your original reporting. And actually, that will lead into this next one. You have to have at least one human source and 2 direct quotes that you obtain. So remember, we've talked about human sources. You need to go talk to somebody, at least one person. You could do more. I would encourage that, but at least one person, and you have to get quotes from them. Remember, quotes are word for word. So you're writing it down, you're recording it, but it's the exact words that they said. You can't make it up, you can't paraphrase. It's word for word, exactly what they said. Those are quotes. And it has to be recorded by you and original to your reporting. And that's what I meant by from this previous one. You can't go and get this off the website or off another news story and take it as your own. You need to be the one getting every single word, word for word. And you have to go talk to somebody. So if you go to a concert, If it's a local one that you can talk to the musicians, maybe you talk to one of the band members and get some quotes from them. If it's, or you can talk to somebody else that's witnessing the concert. Why did they come? If it's a town hall meeting, maybe you go talk to one of the people that were presenting. Maybe you talk to somebody else that came. Why is this issue important to them? Why do they come to listen to this town hall meeting? So you have to go and you have to go talk to somebody. And this is hard to do. I know this is hard to do, to go there and come up and say, hi, I'm a student at Middlesex Community College. I'm taking a journalism class and I'm writing a story for it. I'd really like to interview you for the story. Would you be willing to spend a few minutes right now and answer a few of my questions? A lot of times people say, no thanks, I don't want to do that. Don't take it personal. Thank you for your time, and you move on. It's hard to do, but that's part of what being a reporter is, right? So go up and talk, but you'd be surprised. Most people want to talk. Most people are flattered that you ask them. Most people are excited that you're willing to spend the time to want to listen to what they have to say. And this is where you get a lot of your good details from. So get that human source, go talk to somebody, get your direct quotes from them, and that will be in your story. We'll also be I'll come back to that. Okay, be between 500 and 650 words, not that long, right? So 500, 650 word story. You cannot be below, you cannot be above, right? If it's above, you got to find things to cut. This is the range that we're aiming for. This is usually the range the AP style goes for, online at least. So 500 to 650 words. Have short paragraphs, 1 to 3 sentences, 5 at the most. Break up those paragraphs, right? A lead is 1 sentence. That's 1 paragraph. You go to your nut graph, even look at this AP story. This is a good example right here. 1 sentence, 1 sentence, 1 sentence. The first three paragraphs are 1 sentence. 1 sentence, 1 sentence, 1 sentence, 1 sentence. Actually, I don't know, all of these are 1 sentences. I'm sure we'll get a few with them too. Here we go. Here's a sentence. Here's a sentence. 2 sentence paragraph. 2 sentence paragraph. This one looks like a long one. Let's see how long this one is. 1 sentence, 2 sentences, 3 sentences. And that looks like the longest one, right? So you guys get the idea here, right? 1 to 3 sentences. 4 or 5, maybe let you get away with. But you saw, even that AP story was all 3 sentences and less. So 1 to 3 sentences are what you're sticking for, especially your lead. Your lead needs to be 1 sentence. Has to be written in the third person and in the past tense. So remember, you reported on this. It means it's already happened. So everything is past, and you're not going to use I, like the book talk, because that's first person, right? That's giving your opinion. I is your own account. Third person is kind of like objective. It's the neutral. You're just recording the facts. You're like a video camera. You're just recording what you see. So this is what the core of your story has to be. Here's what I'm going to be grading you on. Is it informative and well-researched? Could I tell you took the time to research and get the proper information that you need to understand the story? It's organization. Big part of Chapter 8 this week, right? How did you organize your facts? And just like that, the exercise that you did a couple weeks ago, how are you going to organize all this information that you got? Where does the key information go in the story? Is the focus clear? Do I understand what the story is about? Within the first 3 paragraphs, is there a key focus to the story, and do you stick to that? Or do you start with something and then trail off and start reporting on something else? Is the writing clear, concise, and informative? So, you took the time to try to make your writing clear, make it understandable. Quality of the quotes. So this is where I was alluding to above here. Your quotes are the spice of the story. So when you do a quote, let me give you an example. Here's an example of a bad quote. If you let's say there's an event coming on, there's an event, a charity organization, and you interview the person, and the person that you take the interview from, they say, let's the organizer of the event, right? And they say, yes, this event is good, and next year, let me back up. All right, so let's do this one. There's an event, it's a charity organization, and the person says, yes, we held it today because it was a Saturday, and Saturdays are when people are free. A, that's a boring quote. B, you can just say that the writer, can just say that it was on a Saturday, right? Or if the person says that or here's the even better one. If your quote from the person is, 50 people attended the event, and that's how you quote the person. 50 people attended the event today. Well, you, the writer, can just say 50 people attended the event today. You can write that. That doesn't need to be a quote. What you could use as the quote, though, think of as like the spice, right? Think of something that's interesting is if the people say, if that person that you interviewed says, yeah, we didn't expect that many people to come. I mean, last year we only had a few, but with all the promotions and with just a beautiful day, we're just so fortunate that everybody came out today, and then you could, the writer can say 50 people attended the event. That quote is a little bit more of a spice. It kind of gives a little bit more flavor to the event. If it's just a fact that you can list, just list it. Just write it out. You're the reporter. You can say that. If it's something that's unique that the person says, right, that's where you use a quote from. So think about that when you're doing quotes. And your book goes over that a little bit more as well. So I'm going to be looking on the quality of your quotes. Did you get really good quotes from the person, or did you just get stuff that could have just been reported on? It's newsworthiness. And here's what I mean by that. Any of these are newsworthy, right? Here's what I don't want. You reporting on your poker game that you had with your friends last Saturday. That might have been fun to you. It's not fun to anybody else. I don't care about it. Nobody cares about it, right? It's only fun to you. That's not newsworthy. Think back to the chapter that we've had with newsworthy. This stuff can all be newsworthy to somebody. Talking about, and even I know some people are going to argue, well, why is my nephew's game newsworthy? I'll let it, maybe it's newsworthy to the other parents that couldn't make it, that would want to know about it, right? But what I don't, and I know it's pushing it a little bit, but what I don't want basically is just you doing something. I had a game night. I saw a movie, whatever. I don't know. My sister's home for the weekend. That stuff is not newsworthy. So it has to be something that, impacts some people. If you're confused by newsworthy, go back to the chapter and read about newsworthy to get a better idea. AP style. We're going to do this all next week, so you don't have to worry about this yet. But next week, there's a certain style of writing as far as lowercase, uppercase, titles. Do you write out numbers? When do you spell things? When do you write things out? When do you use acronyms? That's all AP style. We're going to worry about that next week, but that will be something that I'll be grading on. And then how well the lessons are from the chapters that have been applied. So remember I said those quizzes aren't just to take those quizzes, it's to be learning. So I want what you're learning in the chapters to be applied to your news story. So you might have to go back and even review your chapters, review those quizzes. But these lessons we've been learning, that's what I'm going to be looking, are you going to be using it in your news story? And then the last, if it's free of spelling and grammar errors. So just basic editing. You have to edit this. It has to be clean. It has to be publishable. All right, let me make a little comment right here. Please message me with the event you want to cover, and also contact me if you think you need help finding an event. So just send me a quick message. Hey, Professor Chiara, I'm thinking about doing, my niece's soccer game. Do you think that's okay? And I'll just write you back with yeah, you're good, go for it. Or I might ask a follow-up question if it's something I'm not sure about. I just want to get some clarification and give you the go-ahead. This is also, if you have no idea what to do and you can't think of anything, you can always message me and we can try to brainstorm something. But I want you to contact me sooner rather than later. I mean, you should be giving me it this week, right? This week you should be messaging me, tell me what you want to do. If you don't message me, you just run the risk of you do your story and I look at it and I go, this isn't a hard news story at all. It's your poker game. I'm not accepting that. It's a 0. It's not newsworthy. It doesn't check any of these boxes, right? So you have to, by messaging me, I at least can confirm with you, yeah, go ahead, or I can ask you some follow-up questions and just give you some guidance. And then you're set in your clear mind, you know what you're doing is a good hard news story. If you don't do that, you run the risk of maybe being way off base and it's not a hard news story. Okay, we'll revisit this. You have a few weeks. Again, you can find it in weekly content, or if you go to assignments, you can find it under writing assignments, and it's the first one. Also, remember, you can always go to due dates if you start to get lost with when things are due. You see here, everything that's been due, your quizzes, and if we look at October, you'll see the hard news story. So it gives you a good visual of when things are coming up, what stuff is due. All right, that was a lot today. I know it was a long video, but I had to cover a lot with you. But like I said, this is a big week. Week 4 is like a turning point. You're putting it all together now, and you're going to start actually going out and being a reporter yourself. And you're going to be a journalist and go cover a story. Message me your idea for your hard news story. Message me if you're confused by anything. As always, with the week or with any of the feedback that I give you, please be reading that feedback that I give you for your exercises and the quizzes. study those quizzes even after you've done it, just so you can learn, all that information I put in there I think is helpful for you for when you need to write your own stories. So take the time to go back and review that feedback. Students that do that, I always find end up getting, doing better in the class, because that's why you're doing it. I'm not expecting you just to remember it like this and just be stuck in your head. You got to go back and review that and then keep building. And this hard news story, it's a lot. I know it's for many of you the first time you're ever going out and doing this. I just want to see the lessons being applied. This one is really kind of to get your feet wet. Of course, I'm not going to just give you the easy A, but I'm going to be lenient. So I don't want you to get overwhelmed, panic on this one, right? This is just for you to go out and do it. The best way to practice and to learn is just to go out and do it. So go out and do it. Take some risks. Apply the lessons you learned from the chapter, and you'll be all right on this one. It'll be a good learning experience. I'll give you lots of feedback, and it'll help you build you for your future stories. All right, thanks for sticking with this video. I know it was tough. All right, see you next week.